here today with Bruce Caldwell, who's a professor of economics at Duke University. He is also one of our inaugural grantees, a project to reintroduce the history of economics into the graduate and undergraduate curriculum. What's your strategy for doing that, Bruce?
It's a very long-term project. I think it's going to be a difficult one. History of economics, history of economic thought, related fields like methodology have been out of the graduate curriculum at most places for a number of years. And actually Duke is one of the few places where it still survives.
Why is that? What's special about Duke?
Well, it's advantaged in various ways, and this is one reason why I approached Duke with the idea of this Center for the History of Political Economy. Duke has 5 faculty members who are doing history of economics. They've got an economist papers project there, which is an archival collection, which I think is the best for economists papers in the world. And the major field journal, History of Political Economy, is published there, has been published there for 40 years. And now with the center, actually, what the center has done has ramped it up quite a bit. The center was started...
So this is the strategy of the grant, is to take this existing thing and ramp it up.
Exactly. The center was established in 2008. The idea behind the center is to support various sorts of programs. One of them is a fellowship program where people come in who are senior people who are working on a project, junior people, they might be postdocs, people fresh out of grad school. We even have had a couple of pre-docs, in other words, people who are there for their last year to write their dissertation, finish up their dissertation, and perhaps they're doing a chapter or two that might be in the history of economics. So in addition to the fellowship program, we have a Summer in the Archives program. We have a trained archivist who utilizes people who are fellows of the center to basically go through and catalog and write descriptions of materials that are in the archives. So they're participating in creating an archive. We just got Paul Samuelson's papers, so the fellows that will be there this summer will be working on Samuelson's papers and setting them up so that people who are interested in coming to the archives will be able to know what's in the various boxes. I mean, if I had had this when I was going through, it's just a great way to learn what an archives is, how they're constructed. Now with the grant that we're getting from INET, the proposal was to request money for 3 different things. One of them is a Summer Institute. As I said, history of economics is not alive and well within the discipline, and we can't just count on people coming to Duke to go through our graduate program. That will change things only very slowly, one person at a time. So what we thought was, well, why don't we bring people who might be interested in the history of economics to Duke for short courses. So last summer we ran one that was funded actually by the National Endowment for the Humanities. This summer with the INET money, we have 2 modules. One is a kind of seminal thinkers in economics. It's going to run for 2 weeks. We'll read, the greatest hits, a little bit of Smith, a little bit of Marx, Keynes, Hayek, Marshall, and secondary literature that we think's good. And then a second module will take place, and it is modern history of economics, so 20th century history of economics. And if someone did both of those modules, 2 weeks each, they will have perhaps enough material to think about putting together an undergraduate course or integrating some of this stuff into courses that they might go on to teach. But in addition, we hope to identify 3 or 4 in each one of these modules who we might say, look, you seem to have a real interest in this. What would you think about perhaps coming to the center for a semester or a year, either as a pre-doc or post-doc? And you can sit in on our courses, you can help us with our courses. And we're hoping through a process of time, if we run these summer institutes for a number of years in a row, to actually get a larger number of people who are going to be going on into academia from...
So future professors.
Future professors, precisely right. What we did was we kind of blanketed the top 50, top 100 graduate programs in economics with emails, and we said, look, this program's available. If you're interested, send us an application. We read the applications. We were very much oversubscribed. We were able to, about 1 in 3 who applied got in. So other parts of the INET money then would help pay for fellowships, People who come to the center, we offer them a stipend to come to the center.
Research fellowships.
Research fellowships. And then also, as we start to develop graduate students who are coming through the Duke program, the fact that we now have...
Dissertation fellowships.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So this has been a great step forward, ramping up, as it were, of what we were able to do with the center.
In your proposal, you talk at some length about the value of history of economic thought for undergraduates and for graduates. But in sort of two different dimensions. One is sort of knowing something about the past so that you're not condemned to reinvent it. So that I would say that's sort of the knowledge dimension. But I'm particularly interested in, I would say, the sensibility dimension. Okay, that somehow reading these texts, thinking about these texts, discussing these texts, changes the way you do economics.
Well, it certainly should have an effect. One of the things that you would see, for example, in studying Adam Smith is that, well, The Wealth of Nations, that you've heard so much about, is actually a fairly interesting book, or at least parts of it are, perhaps not The Digression on Silver, but the rest of it is pretty good. But he also wrote A Theory of Moral Sentiments, and this is a marvelous book. It's a remarkable book. The latest Penguin edition has a wonderful introduction by Amartya Sen, talking about Smith's approach to ethics and the sorts of insights that one can derive from studying Smith. John Stuart Mill was a philosopher as well as an economist. Hayek wrote a book on the sensory order, on psychology. Keynes had one on probability theory. So these people
So it's a broadening influence, is what you're saying.
One of the experiences that we had last summer, we had economists together with people from the humanities, so philosophers, historians, English professors, these various different areas. And the sensibilities that they brought to their reading of these texts and the discussion that followed was absolutely wonderful. With every discussion, I just had new ideas and new insights that were brought by the people who were participating in the exercise. One of the advantages is it allows you to actually be able to start communicating a little bit better about issues that, by studying the history of economics, you're a little bit more aware of. And more sensitive.
Communicate with the other social sciences and even the humanities.
What the heck?
Like.
What the heck?
What the heck?
Yeah.
So in your own life, what brings you, you're now the director of this center.
That's right.
What kind of a life leads you to becoming the director of this center? What did you do before this?
Right. So for a long time, I was an historian of economics. My actual dissertation was not in history of economics, but in the area of economic methodology. And it led to a book called Beyond Positivism, so talking about the development of economic methodology in the 20th century. And the second phase of my research career was that I became interested in alternative groups to mainstream groups. One of the things about methodology is that the mainstream just seemed to kind of say, okay, this is the way you do economics, there's good economics and bad economics. But all of the critics of the mainstream were often much more articulate about the specific methodological ideas that they had and why they would be disagreeing with mainstream economics. So in investigating alternative approaches to economics, I stumbled across the Austrian movement and Friedrich Hayek and became fascinated by Hayek. He's a fascinating figure. I mean, he particularly if you wanted to look at the way that economics developed in the 20th century, he was born in 1899, he died in 1992. He knew most of the famous 20th century economists. He disagreed with everybody. It's a way of studying the development of 20th century economics by studying his life.
This project on understanding Hayek and using him as a narrative thread through the 20th century led to a book.
It led to a couple of things. One was my book, Hayek's Challenge, which is an intellectual history of Hayek, emphasizing some of his methodological insights, actually, and some of his criticisms of economics. But it also led to, I'm the general editor of the collected works of F.A. Hayek, and that has been a marvelous experience because it required me to learn everything about Hayek. This is a guy who's written in political theory, in the methodology of the social sciences, in capital theory, in critique of socialism. He has this the knowledge problem in his contributions to economics of information. So he's just written in so many different fields, and it's a real challenge, but it's been a very happy one for me.
It sounds like a life project, and you're wearing a lot of hats these days.
Right.
So we're glad that one of the hats that you're willing to wear here is the hat of an INET economist.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm delighted to be able to wear that hat, I must say.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.